Hi, and welcome back to Coffee and Calacas. I'm your host, Joe. If you're new to this channel, I want to welcome you and let you know that this is a weekly podcast where we sit around the coffee table, drink coffee, discuss mysticism, the supernatural, and what else lies in the beyond. If this is something that interests you, then hope you stick around and enjoy this week's show. Thank you. All right, so last week we discussed shadow people. And like I said, I was going to try to fit in sleep paralysis this week, and I made it happen. I was able to move, my topics around. So I just felt like it was going to work great this way. I mean, what can I tell you? There is a lot of research on sleep paralysis in a scientific way, which I think it's great and all. But when it comes to the supernatural part of sleep paralysis, it is often, I don't want to say it's debunked or, how would you say it? It's often kind of brushed aside. People saying, oh, there's research on it with science, so therefore whatever you're experiencing is just invalid. They really, from what I've read in comments and forums, is that, when it comes to sleep paralysis, people often feel invalidated because of science. Which, nothing wrong with science. I'm a big science, lover and all. So I'm totally for it. But I also feel that you should validate a person's feelings and, let them have that moment where they can say, okay, this is what I experienced. And, let them and help them understand that, you do respect what their experience is. Woke up this morning, not necessarily panicked, but I woke up from a nightmare. And I know I've mentioned before, I have many different fears, fear of spiders, fear of the dark, fear of mirrors, X, Y, and Z, right? So one of my other fears is a fear of elevators. I don't like to ride in elevators. If I need to, I'll do it. But for the most part, if I can avoid going on an elevator, I will try to avoid it, just because I don't like feeling confined. I feel trapped in an elevator. There's always a fear of this thing can plummet. And in my dream, it was just that. I was leaving a building. I'm not even sure what building I was in. But I was leaving a building, and I was leaving and it was just 2 stories. So I don't know why I went in an elevator, but I did. And I walked in, and apparently this elevator opened from like the front and from the back. It was weird. Like it had 2 openings, and I stepped into the elevator, and I pressed for the first floor. And all of a sudden, like, I felt this, like, rush, like this elevator was going to plummet. So I remember holding on to the sides of the rails on the side of the elevator. And I was just, like, praying, okay, hopefully I can survive this. And then all of a sudden, the elevator just stops. And the doors don't open. And I go into this bigger panic because I'm confined in this elevator. The elevator doors don't open from the back, and they open from the front. But for some reason in the front, when they open on this side, they were opening to a brick wall. And so I was even more of a panic, because in my mind, I'm like, how am I supposed to get out of here? Who's going to help me get out? So I remember reaching for the emergency telephone line, and I picked it up, and there was a lot of static, and all of a sudden I woke up. And when I woke, I, felt myself very flushed. Felt myself, just a little, I guess, anxious. Not necessarily panicked, but, a little anxious, because, it felt so real. And that's the thing with sleep paralysis. Scientists say the dream you're in feels so real, because it's not necessarily a dream, it's a nightmare. It feels so real that people believe that they're awake when it happens. Now, thank goodness for me, it really was just a nightmare. Nothing more than that. But for some people, it's more than just a nightmare. For some people, it's a weekly occurrence, a nightly occurrence. and it's profoundly scary. So if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, um, I believe you when you say that, something's there. Like I've mentioned before, when I've been in bed before, I've experienced different kinds of things. Whether it's someone sitting on my bed, my foot being pulled, I've had a sensation of hearing someone breathe on my ear. Uh, many times, I have been unable to sleep in my own bedroom because of what I have felt and what I've experienced. And so, if I've experienced that, and I not necessarily what I consider what I've experienced sleep paralysis, because I'm able to move, I'm able to get up from the bed, I'm able to turn on the lights right away. I don't feel this crushing feeling on my chest, but for others, it's so scary, and it's debilitating. For those who are not aware, sleep paralysis is this. It's a feeling of being conscious, but being unable to move. So for some people, it's a feeling of you're awake, but you're not able to move your body. You're not able to move your legs. You're not able to talk. And like I said, there is a lot of like science behind it, which is great. I am totally for science behind certain studies, just because it helps validate feelings for people where they say, hey, I experienced this, and people who are very logical and they need something concrete can say, okay, it was just that. It was just I believe the term is a flip of a switch kind of situation. The way I have it understood, it's sleep paralysis occurs when you're in REM sleep, REM, and that's when it's the rapid eye movement. And the rapid eye movement, that's when your brain actually goes into a dream state. It repairs, memories. It basically what it does, from what I have understood with science and my schooling and all of that, it's REM works to repair the brain from throughout the day. Our brains do not necessarily take damage, but they're exhausted from everything, and they need that moment to just shut down. They it's like, okay, think of it as a computer. Your brain is a computer, and your computer, you need to save stuff. So REM works as the save, the auto save. So you're making those memories, you're making those connections, and it's saving it, it's storing it, it's filing it away in the proper folders and stuff. It's erasing what doesn't need it, excess information that's unnecessary, junk mail, things like that. It's getting rid of it. So during that time, if your computer crashes during REM, during its saving process, you're gonna have to reboot it, and it's a hassle. And basically, that's what happens with your brain when it's in sleep paralysis. Your brain is in REM. It's saving stuff. It's fixing, correcting things. It's regenerating things and stuff. So when you wake, you're basically having to reboot your body again. You're doing a heart reset. It did something. It malfunctioned when it wasn't supposed to. So the way it works is it's a switch. So when REM turns on, your sleep is supposed to be on too. Okay. So both switches are on. Well, the light switches are on. When REM turns off, you're able to wake up. You're still asleep. Some people still, most people still sleep through REM, without REM. That's your deep sleep, your light sleep, your REM sleep. There's different cycles through our sleep and stuff. So it happens throughout the night. It's not just REM happens at 1 a.m. and that's it. No, if you go to bed at 9, you might have REM by 11 p.m. and then again around 3 a.m. and maybe once more around, before you wake up around 6. You're up by 7. You're good. You're Gucci. Good to go. So you cycle throughout the night with your sleep. So when that happens, when REM is on, your sleep button is supposed to stay on. They're both supposed to be switched on. Sometimes the sleep button turns off for whatever reason, and REM stays on, and that's when people experience the sleep paralysis. And like I said, it's a state of being when you're awake, when when you're asleep, when you're supposed to be asleep, okay? Or for some people, they've experienced this when they're trying to fall asleep. It's a state of paralysis, and it's when a person is aware, but they're unable to move or speak. Okay, during an episode, one may hallucinate, hear, feel, or see things that are not there, which often results in fear. Now, of course, it's going to result in fear because you're paralyzed. If you've ever been through surgery, it's creepy. I had surgery to remove my gallbladder that had ruptured a few years ago, and I've always been afraid of anesthesia and surgery. So I remember talking to the anesthesiologist before going into surgery, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay." I said, "Are you sure I'm going to fall asleep? Are you sure I'm not going to feel anything?" He's like, "You're not going to feel anything." I said, "But are you certain?" He's like, "I am more than certain. Like, you're not going to feel anything." I said, "But I've read that people have woken up during surgery," and he's like, "It happens, but it won't happen to you." But I feel like he couldn't give me that assurance. He's like, so then I've also read that people may not wake up from anesthesia because they've had too much of it. So it's just a different state of like panic for me. Where I have read where people have been asleep or sedated enough where they can still feel everything, but they can't move, they can't talk, right? And that's been my fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel everything and I'm not going to be able to communicate to the people around me that I'm feeling something. So I was panicked, and he looks at me, he's like, "Do you want me to give you something to help you relax?" I said, yes, please do. So he gives me an injection to help me relax, and that's before the anesthesia. And I remember going into the operating room, and I look around, and it's this white room, like everything just looks white and clean and pristine and stuff, and I see this big lamp right over me, and all of a sudden I was out. I don't remember anything else. I remember waking up in the recovery room, and I remember telling the nurse I need to get up to go pee, and she's like, no, you're good. You have you just had a catheter and you're good. I'm like, no, I really need to get up to go pee. And she's like, no, you can't move. And they didn't want me to move because I had just had surgery. And she's like, I'll bring you a bedpan. And she brings me a bedpan, and she was like, oh my God, you did have to go. And I was like, I told you so. And I remember knocking back out. Then I remember waking up again, and I was in an elevator, and there was a man in the elevator, and so was my nurse or orderly. I'm not sure who was taking me to the room, back to my hospital room. And I remember turning to the side, I'm like, hey, I just had surgery. And the man just next to me, he's like, oh, good for you. And they wheeled me to my room, and I was alone. My mom had something to do with that moment, and she couldn't be there. But I remember when I woke up, my mom comes back, and she's there, and I'm like, hey, Mom. And then I remember my friend, one of my closest friends, Tanya, walking in with her sister, Laura, and love them both, like amazing, people. And I remember seeing them, and I'm like, oh, hey, I just had surgery. And they're like, yeah, we know, that's what we came to see you. And afterwards, I was like, okay, you know what? That wasn't so bad. I didn't feel anything. And then I felt everything, like, I guess once really the anesthesia left my body, because honestly, I was in and out. I really was in and out from, like sleep and stuff. And I know a part of me was fighting to stay awake because I didn't want to stay asleep forever. And I wanted to make sure that I was okay, that the people around me were around me and stuff. And so I kept fighting. Eventually, when all that medication wore off, like, man, I felt everything. And I was like, oh, man, what a difference. So I have read that, people have experienced that, see paralysis of sorts in surgery. So who's not to say you can't feel it when going to bed, right? And people have felt it where they're just unable to move. They can't speak. And they start feeling things, and it's scary. It's so scary. Often this sleep paralysis is associated with narcolepsy. Most people who are healthy don't necessarily experience it. But not everyone who has sleep paralysis or has had sleep paralysis has narcolepsy. You know, there are healthy people who have experienced it, and you know, you wonder why. And isn't necessarily sleep paralysis. I read a forum. Someone was saying that this man kept being diagnosed with sleep paralysis by doctors, and he's like, it's not. He's like, my girlfriend has seen me experience these things, you know, where it's like I'm unable to move, and there's something on me, and you can see, like, you know, it's just a sensation. And I believe he ended up going to a priest for like an exorcism of sorts, maybe for some kind of blessing. And even the priest was like, yes, it's true, I was there, you know, I saw it happen, and you know, it's quite real, you know, what he experienced. It wasn't necessarily, you know, sleep paralysis, but something was after him, you know. Not necessarily. And he said, you know, this, I believe the priest said that it wasn't necessarily something that was evil, but something was following him. So go figure, you know, things like that do happen, right? Several types of hallucinations that people have had while they're asleep are the belief that there's an intruder in the room, the presence of an incubus, and the sensation of floating. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I mean, I'm more than certain you have. That feeling of, you know, you're asleep and all of a sudden you just like fall. What's a term for it? I'll look it up real quick. It's called the hypnic jerk or the myoclonic jerk. It's supposed to be you know, a way for you know, your body to enter different stages, and when you're exiting the stages, it's supposed to go smoothly, and there's ones where it doesn't like necessarily go as smoothly, and therefore you do feel that jerking sensation, that feeling like you're gonna fall. Most of the time babies feel it when they're asleep, and you sense it. I know that I read not even read it, I believe there was a video on it where they were showing a baby and who's asleep, and it's a feeling of falling, and I believe if you touch the bottom of their foot when they're babies, their foot just like jerks back, and it's a feeling of insecurity, and you know, they pull it back, and that's how you feel that way. So if you felt that, I mean, you've had a sort of feeling of sleep paralysis of sorts, you know. People have felt like they're floating, and a neurological hypothesis for that is that in sleep paralysis, the mechanisms which usually coordinate body movement and provide information on body position become activated, and because there is no actual movement, it induces a floating sensation. The intruder and incubus hallucinations highly correlate with one another, and moderately correlated with the third hallucination. They're also known as out-of-body experiences, which differ from, you know, the threat-activated vigilance system. So, how I view it, I believe, yeah, it is very possible that, you know, you experience something that cannot be explained just by pure science. And that if you wake up and you know you're awake and you see something in your room, or anywhere, you know, for that matter, it's quite possible that, you know, what you experience was supernatural. In folklore, there is a story of what's called the night hag. It is a creature in cultures from around the world that explains the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. It's a common description that a person feels a presence or supernatural malevolent being in which it immobilizes the person, like if they're standing on their chest. And that's a feeling that people have often said, that they feel this person sits on their chest and they're unable to talk or breathe. And that, you know, this person is just staring down at them. And people are able to describe what is staring at them, which is why I say it correlates with shadow people, because people have said that sensation where they're in bed and they're sleeping and they can't move, and they see these shadows. They see a shadow person coming at them. They feel someone coming towards them, choking them, and that's kind of what the paralysis does too. You know, you feel the sensation that something is attacking you. And this has gone back for centuries through literature and through art. It's not just something that's a recent kind of discovery. It's something that's been felt for years. Um, the cultural significance of this is that although the core features of sleep paralysis, which is the whole hallucinations and stuff, appear to be universal, there are ways in which they are experienced. The way you experience it changes from place and culture. People have had the sensation of ghosts, alien visits, demonic possession, alien abductions. The night hag, shadow people. All those correlate with sleep paralysis, and depending on where you're at, that's kind of what people have experienced. Culture is said that it changes, why people experience sleep paralysis. In the United States, it is often said that people who have experienced alien abductions at night only experience sleep paralysis. I don't know how true that is, though. I mean, I'm pretty sure aliens are real, and I mean, why would someone dream about being probed? Just no. Like I said, in Italy, there's regions of it where people have experienced what is called the pandafece, attack the pandafece, usually refers to an evil witch, which is kind of like a hag, sometimes a ghost-like spirit or terrifying creature or creature that mounts on the chest like a cat of the victims and tries to harm them by sucking up their soul. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, if that's true, that is super scary. I mean, I have said I'm afraid of a spider going into my mouth. I would be afraid of a creature sitting on my chest and trying to suck my soul out, which reminds me of that movie from Stephen King, Sleepwalkers. Magnificent. If you haven't seen it, magnificent. They would suck your soul out to stay young. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, really go out and watch it. It's not a bad thing to watch. In Newfoundland, sleep paralysis is referred to as the old hag, and victims of a hagging are said to be hag-ridden. Now, from different forums I've read, when people have woken up to that, they say that they've had to pray. Some people have said that they've thrown holy water. Some have even said they've cursed the demon that comes at them. Now, which reminds me of like what my great grandpa used to say about la lechuza, that when you see the lechuza, you curse at it and you tell it to come back for salt. Now, whether that's true or not, what's going on, I mean, there's various ways that people cope with it, because it's something that people do feel. In 2015, there was a documentary called The Nightmare. It discusses the causes of sleep paralysis as seen through extensive interviews with participants, and the experiences are reenacted by professional actors. It proposes that such cultural phenomena as alien abduction, the near-death experience, and shadow people can, in many cases, be attributed to sleep paralysis. The real-life horror film debuted at the Sundance Film Festival on January 26, 2015, and premiered in theaters in June 5th, 2015. I never heard of it. I don't know how I'd never heard of it, but I never did. Now, I mean, when I first heard of sleep paralysis, it wasn't anytime recently. I know I was maybe in my early 20s. I remember reading a forum from a radio show, and they were discussing sleep paralysis, and I was curious about it, and they said, "Oh, go to our link, and you can click on it, and you can find more information." So I did, because I really wanted to see what it was about. So I remember going on there and I was reading the different comments that people had left and saying that, hey, I experienced this, and it was scary, and this is what I had. I remember seeing a woman sitting on my chest, and she had scraggly hair, and she was just breathing on me, and I kept trying to push her, and my arms wouldn't move, and she was holding down my arms, and then someone else was like, I remember things holding my arms down, and I was trying to push them off, and nothing would happen, and someone else saying that they had their dog in their bed with them, and when they woke up and they were trying to move, they couldn't, and their dog reacted, and their dog was barking, growling at whatever was in the room, and eventually that growl, like when the dog tried to attack the creature, the person woke up, and they were able to move at that point. So I think about it, and I'm like, okay, well, dogs are very attuned to things. I know my dogs see stuff in the house all the time that are, more than just a bug. It's like they see something, and when they do, they act a certain way. So who's not to say that a dog can sense something that's in the room when maybe no one else can sense it, right? But they sense that you're in danger, and they try to defend you, because dogs are pretty loyal that way. Where I feel like a cat would be like, oh, girl, I see you struggling, but I'm gonna mind my own business and just, ignore you. Maybe you need a dog too. If you're a cat person, and maybe you need a dog to help you during sleep paralysis. If you're a cat person, that's great, but yeah, consider getting a dog for these kinds of emergencies. Yeah, so I remember reading that one, and the person said the dog woke up, the dog lunged. At that moment, the creature got off of them, and then they were able to, like, they jolted up. That was the term they used. They jolted up, and the dog was just growling at, like, the corner of the room for the rest of the night, and I thought, well, wow, it's possible, it's not everything's just science, and things are supernatural, which sounds ridiculous sometimes, because I mean, I can hear it. Like, if you're someone who is educated, you're thinking, oh, come on, if it's explained by science, just leave it at that. And for the most part, yeah, but some things are a little supernatural. So what do you think? What have you heard of sleep paralysis? Have you ever experienced it? If you have experienced it, what did you experience? I mean, I'm curious to know. I'm curious to find out. If you want to share your story, go ahead and email me at calacaspod@gmail.com. Go to calacaspod.com, and we have a link to our email there, as well to all our social media. I want to thank all our followers who listen to our podcast and follow us on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. Really appreciate it. Y'all make a difference. So yeah, that was this week, sleep paralysis. Let me know what you think. Comment and like down below. Like and subscribe, and let me know. Just remember, follow us on Instagram so you can stay tuned to all our latest information. And remember, life begins after coffee. Have a good weekend. Bye.